to the whole course. So, and I see that a little different than experiential learning, where experiential learning might be, hey, we're talking about revenue management in this week today, let's bring in a guest speaker. We have that speaker, you know, students reflect on that piece, and then we move on to the next topic. Where applied learning, we're taking that through the whole semester and through the whole course, and really engaging the students in each part of the course as they develop more knowledge and more skills. And from a SUNY perspective, SUNY has really taken this approach to applied learning and integrated it into the curriculum. So 40% of all SUNY programs require an approved applied learning experience in the curriculums and in the program. So we know from a SUNY perspective that our students are really getting this applied learning approach, and hopefully adding value and creating opportunity, not just learning about the theory and models in the classroom, but really getting that hands-on approach and not just a one-off experience. If you want to go to the next slide. So we separated it in these two categories, and you will see some overlap. So internships fall under both, but in experiential learning, those class observations, those guest speakers, maybe taking it to the lab to learn cutting skills, what we learned in this chapter and so forth. From an active learning perspective, we still can have internships in labs and clinicals, but where I see that we take it a little deeper is in those projects, those creative works, some research, you know, like Noel and Cheryl said they're working on, civic engagement and that service learning. And the key point to the active learning or the applied learning is really embedded for credit in those courses and foundational to the course for the whole semester. So that's a little introduction and the difference between both, because I know there's a lot of conversation about experiential learning and you know, that hands-on approach. And so the goal of our discussion today is really to take it a level deeper. So I'll turn it over to Noel.
Great, thank you so much. So what I wanted to bring in is, as we think about what Jennifer just shared, and as we start to really break this down, it's the difference between this idea of direct application and direct experience, right? And where we take those deeper dives. And one of the things for those of us that might be in an AACSB institution is that there is a lot of focus right now around standard number 9, which is engagement and societal impact. So not sure how many of you have started these discussions, but it's one of the 2020 standards that if anyone's up for review, a lot of focus in this area. And it's really about how can we embed some of the learning within our classroom to really have an impact, whether it's at that local, national, or global level. And there are some specific competencies that AACSB wants us to really focus on and embed not only in our missions, but in our classrooms. And this is where this idea of service learning and community engagement come in. And it's really about how do we leverage experiential education that is going to, at the same time, simultaneously allow us to serve the community, learn academically. And typically what we see is this is a very cyclical process where it might be, you know, theories and that preparation steps that have to happen in the classroom. So this can be where there's that direct experience piece, but then there's this action. And what makes and differentiates service learning as compared to other types of learning is then there's that reflection piece. So as I start to sit back, as I start to really look and evaluate the person, you know, what is my sense of purpose? You know, how do I start to focus on the humanity sides of our overall presence? And this also gets into that AACSB standard around critical thinking, where it's just not about how do we strategize. It's now really about, do we provide our students with enough exposure, experiences, and application in the classroom where they're able to build their capacity to incorporate values, futures, disruption in thinking skills beyond what we've been doing today in the classroom. So a lot of focus around this. And Ya-Ling, if you would please go to the next slide. With that, we want to really take you through some best practices that the three of us are using in the classroom. And, here are just some examples, and I rather just talk to some of them. So for those of you that don't know, my background and discipline is I'm really on the policy and strategy side of things, but I have significant experience in food and beverage. And I lead our events, including esports at Stockton. And, one of the things that I've tried to really purposely do is, even ask my class, what is the difference that we want to make going forward, whether it's for each one of you or within our community. So you're going to see in this first upper left-hand corner, I actually teach a general studies course called Farm to Table, and it's all about students taking a deep dive into food social movements and how they connect us to our broader community. And throughout the semester, students partake in a variety of different tours. They have guest speakers from local purveyors to CSA owners. And then this all culminates in a large scale event that's open to the public, open to not only our Stockton community, but we market across the entire county where students have a chance to share their posters. And that's in that far right-hand corner. That's actually some pipe and drape with all their research posters. So they get to present their research, and then the students actually facilitate a panel with community members. And then even during the event, we have different stations where, even our community members are engaging in the process. So it's really an amazing way, particularly for the instructor, to see that transformation that happens in the student throughout the semester. And then you can see in some of the bottom corners, we do a variety of different projects related to food and beverage where we visit kitchens, but more than that, we actually partner with the restaurant owners where we get an initial tour, and then we actually go to the extent where we collect all of their data from their POS system. We look at their purchasing system, and then we help them to standardize recipes. The students go through and do all analysis on menu engineering to identify where they might have opportunities to improve margins per menu item. And then some of the other ones in my class, you'll see where they have hard hats on. We've had an opportunity to learn about from a facilities management perspective, and I'm sorry Joy Dickerson isn't here today because we've had some conversations around this, where we actually take students, they go to a recycling center and a treatment plant, they learn about the process, and then they get to experience and understand the impact of some of the conservation sustainability efforts. And then they do projects around that. And then my bottom two pictures, you're going to see students where there's a wall map to even drive engagement in the classroom as far as an event design process, is where students, they're actually collaborating on a citywide event for the city. They're actually doing an event prototype where they'll then present to stakeholders their ideas and concepts, and then they're going to get to execute the event for those stakeholders. So, the processes, and you'll see that there's all these steps built in to really reflect on that process, because we consider some of these service learning, some of these are just community engagement. But our goal is to have a positive impact. And that for us means that we're generating awareness that wasn't there in our communities before. And then just one of my favorite last ones for my farm to table class, and ties into food and beverage because we do cheese making and a whole bunch of stuff, is our students actually got to milk cows. So they got to see the process, and then they got to get hands-on in right in there. So that's just some of my highlights from my classes. I'd like to pass it back to Jennifer to share some of the things that she's doing in the classroom.
So I do not have beautiful pictures, so sorry. But so just some examples of how I'm using the applied learning throughout my courses. So I've transitioned, as some of you know, from teaching a million hospitality courses to I'm doing a lot of business courses now and building our tourism program. So which I'm really enjoying. But these particular courses are introduction courses. So we have our marketing, our tourism, and our management course. So what I've done in each of these courses, and so for example, marketing, a lot of students are new to the program, and from the first day of class, I put them in groups or teams, and they're tasked with creating a marketing plan. And so, I've break it up throughout the semester, part 1, part 2, part 3. And then what's happening is as we learn more knowledge and theory and foundations of marketing, they're tasked with then filling in this business plan and really going and researching and critically thinking about, market segmentation and social responsibility and ethics and what are these companies doing? What could they do better? Creating SWOT analysis and so forth. And so, currently right now we're at part 3, right? So they're creating action plans and budgets for these companies, and now they're evaluating each other and providing some feedback. The in-person classes will present to each other, and we'll have some peer review and peer feedback. So, I'm trying to get away from this idea of, hey, here's your final project. And we all know as educators, the reality is those students will start working on it now, right? And the last day of classes is next week. So, and I don't want that because they're not learning anything. And this way, I really feel that they're more engaged with the material that they're learning and from discussion and lecture and the resources we have in the classroom. They're able to engage better with our speakers and what's presented in the class because they can actually apply it to this marketing plan. And I think it enables them to think a little more critically, where they weren't doing that at the beginning of the semester. So those plans have come together really well. And even from a new product line, I mean, some of the new product lines that they've come up with for these big power brands like Gatorade and Apple, and I mean, I was like, you need to send that to them. I mean, these are wonderful. And so we're really drawing on that creative aspect as well and really getting them to think of what would benefit that. And again, as we progress through the semester, they're getting more tools and more skills and more knowledge. And so at the end, they have this robust product. From the tourism and hospitality class, and I've done this a few years, and I think I've shared it with a couple people here. They have to do a hospitality enterprise portfolio. Same thing, there's a lodging, there's a food and beverage side of it, and then a tourism product or service, and all of that has to be related. They're creating the concept, they're creating any special features or attributes, who the competition is, who their target market is. They're designing these this product. And so again, as we progress through the class and we learn about accommodations and we learn about food and beverage and we learn about other products of tourism and hospitality, they build onto this plan. And so as you can see, how keeping that foundational through that course. And lastly, in our management class, the students are serving as management consultants for a surfboard company, to make it fun. It's a smaller class. And this provides them an opportunity to look at, those functions of management and what's lacking and what priorities of the company should be. So, what's their organizational design and what's their structure and what's their leadership model and, what's their culture of the organization, what's their code of ethics. They created climate surveys. They created put people into teams and created new product lines and worked on finances and at the end here now, how are they monitoring and evaluating that? And again, leaving that those functions of management are again foundational through this whole project, through the whole class. Everything can tie back to that. And in using this approach, especially in these 3 courses, has really helped me personally be able to assess the learning of my students better. And so I can see very specifically in this area of their project where they might not be understanding or where they might not grasp something. So let's say from, they don't understand the different types of organizational structures or design. So we can revisit that and have them think a little deeper about something. So it has been successful for me, and I've really enjoyed seeing them grow. And again, I can focus and see that growth throughout the semester. And so this has really been a positive experience for me as well. So I'll turn it over to Ya-Ling.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so for me, I am going to talk a little bit about this course model. It's called Coil. I know that we have a lot of abbreviation we have to learn. So this one, Coil stands for Collaborative Online International Learning. So this is actually a SUNY initiative. So SUNY has a SUNY Coil Center. So they provide these resources for all the SUNY campuses. So basically, this model is connects students and professors in different countries for a collaborative project or discussion. Hold on, discussion as a part of their coursework. Okay, so basically you're working with another faculty member that is from outside of the United States. Excuse me. Okay, so that sounds actually a lot of work, but actually it is a lot of work. But the Coil, what Coil set up is you can actually as an instructor, you have all the liberty or freedom to decide how you wanted to do it. Okay, so here is the diagram over here. So for example, you can do so two professors will collaborate. So then you both can decide it how you want what kind of level you want to do the collaboration. If you guys wanted to do co-teaching together, or you don't want to do teaching at all, co-teaching at all, you can also focusing on another level, which is a student collaboration. So that's collaborations between students between your students and students from for another country. Okay, so there's no set or requirement. So everything is, you can do whatever you want. You can even, you want to do co-teaching, maybe you just want to do one course co-teaching throughout the whole semester, that's fine. Or you don't want to do co-teaching at all. Or you only want to do student collaboration. So basically there's a lot of methods that you can use. So at SUNY Brockport, we have a group of faculty that we are the standing committee for Coil on campus, and a lot of us has this experience. So I was lucky that I had someone more senior faculty. They had this experience, so they kind of walk me through how this is gonna work and etc. So I decided I am going to try because I mean, we are a tourism and hospitality industry, and we are inherent needs to be very more international, global, for our student. And so, I mean, based on our students' composition, not like students choose to study abroad, it's actually not a very high percentage. But a lot of students, they actually indicate their interest in if they had this opportunity. So based on our survey and understanding that Coil can actually provide this type of opportunity for students that wanted to have this international experience without actually going out of United States, due to some of the constraints. It could be financial or health or personal, individual, different constraints. Okay, so that's just kind of a little background about how this Coil work. So I am going to share with you about, and so next time I'm going to share with you about my experience. So I did this Coil with the university at Netherlands. And so my class at Brockport is sustainable tourism. And for them, for the class in Netherlands, their course is called Active Leisure. And they're from sports study program from the university, Han University of Applied Science. So we met before the course started. Me and they actually had 2 instructors for that course. So all of us met before the class, and we decided we are not going to go for a co-teaching part. Because that's a lot of logistics we have to figure it out, including time differences. How can we make sure that we actually showed up at the same time? So because that was our first time doing Coil, so we decided to kind of keep it a little simple for the first time's sake. So we decided only to do the student collaboration, the collaboration between students. So what we did is we had a Coil assignment itself. So so we designed it as a sequential assignment. So the first one is, of course, we'll do a little ice-breaking assignment. So they get to know each other between American students and Dutch students. So they find a way to communicate with each other, and but students, I encourage them to do a video. So this is one of our group students over here. They did a video, introduce themselves to their group member. Okay, so we pair students from Brockport and students from Han University, so they work together. Okay, but not exactly in the same group project. So what we did is we decided to do the second assignment is an interview. So they have to interview each other. Okay, so just treat them as they're your client, because in the end, you're going to do a trip design. So you have to interview your client and, know and get to know their needs and wants, and then design a trip for them. Okay, so they do it with each other. Okay, so that's what we do, this sequential assignment. In the end, they did kind of presentation to each other and feedback from each other. So so that's basically what we did for this Coil. So I was actually really nervous because I didn't know how that's gonna turn out, but it turns out students really enjoyed this experience, because they so for example, for the icebreaker, so they would ask students from Netherlands, it's like, oh, so is that really a lot of drugs are legal in Netherlands, things like that. So maybe some of them stereotyping, but they really get the chance to know the students in another country. And then so all the students, they really think this was a very valuable experience for them. So this is my experience. And so like I said, this is a whole kinds of different ways that you can collaborate with a professor overseas. And it could be a same discipline, and some of my colleagues at Brockport, they actually working in total discipline that you never thought about what kind of chemistry they would have. So for example, some of them, they're from genders and women's studies, they work with engineering, and they just find a way to maybe create an assignment or create a topic that can actually combine women gender studies and engineer in the same topic. Then the students can learn from each other and learn with each other. And I know I said this is a SUNY initiative, but it doesn't mean that you can't do that if you're not in SUNY system, because now after pandemic, everyone is more familiar with this online platform. So if you, for example, if you go to Eurocre, which I just did, I had an amazing time and with Cheryl. And so maybe you get to know someone at a conference and overseas, and then you guys think could be an opportunity to work together. Then I said, just go ahead. I mean, it's nice. SUNY system has this center, has resources. They had a training for you, but I think even without that, you can still make it work, and then just be part of a very valuable student learning experience. And if you really want to do that, and I mean, again, you're not from SUNY system, and really happy to help, and then, you know, kind of share more about my experiences. All right, so that's all from my experience, and I believe that's all our experiences. And like I said in the beginning, we want us to be very conversational. So we will open up to everybody. If anybody would like to share your own experience with everyone, you're welcome to jump in.
Calm down. There's plenty of room for everyone to have a chance to share.
I had a question. So rather than sharing, so there's lots of definitions for community engagement, service learning, and the different variations. Have you found any articles that really define those things? I mean, is it internship really community engagement? You know, I've seen lots of different ways of framing these terms, and I didn't know if any of you have found standardization across maybe different disciplines, or maybe even in education. So I'd be interested on people's thoughts on that.
So I guess I can jump in there first, Charlotte. So one, I think that's a great question. And I think it becomes even more of a critical consideration for those of us that might be operating under AACSB. You know, I know for us that, you know, we're currently in a program review, and we found that even within our own internal standards for how we're defining service learning, is whether or not we truly align to some of those definitions. So if I was to throw out there, you know, what I am seeing a lot now is that service learning and kind of that standard definition, because I was even looking for this presentation to try to find that. And I haven't necessarily been able to find one. What I'm seeing more of a connection to is this idea of service learning and significant connections to, I'm going to call it, for lack of a better word, like mindful practices. Like I'm seeing a lot of articles now are coming out with how does service learning, connect to these ideas of systematic racism? How does service learning connect to civic engagement? How does it connect to faculty involvement in public service? But so I'm seeing these varieties of definitions expand versus really kind of a very condensed framework for us to almost have a model to engage in a I want to say a specific way and then grow from there. And I don't know if anyone else has taken a look or have seen any of those same things.
I can add, I would agree with you, Noel. And the problem is AACSB doesn't even really define that standard very well. So it's kind of left open for interpretation. And civic engagement is, we have a service learning fellowship program at Widener, which I participated in order to teach what we call a transcripted service learning course. You have to go through this whole fellowship program. And because we don't teach intro to hospitality anymore because our program has changed into sports and event management. We used to do a really cool project that we partnered with, and Cheryl, you'll remember this. We had a co-op class at Widener, and the intro to tourism and hospitality would partner with the co-op class to do this entire Thanksgiving meal at the local Chester Salvation Army. But there was requirements with reflection and how did it advance the community and what did we do? What impact did we make? So I think that that piece, that's what service learning is versus just going out, which is a good thing, but just going out and doing community service. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the part of not just what we should think of service learning, but when we do, for example, in a capstone course where we work with a hospitality company or some company in business to help them develop a strategic plan or advance a marketing plan or something where so that's also community impact, where we're engaging with our local community. Our students are applying what they're learning, but also helping the community move forward, helping a company move forward. So I think there's a lot of, I haven't seen literature that kind of standardizes it all, and to what you were mentioning, Cheryl, and even to your point, because we're also AACSB, there, when we just had our visit about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, there is, and we could do much better in that area. There isn't really, they don't even really define it that well. I don't know if you agree or disagree, Noel, in terms of what the expectation is from them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, Jeff. And I mean, I had to watch, there's this video out there that I even had to watch myself, because I want to say it's kind of that fluffier side. Like it's, you know, how do we almost constantly make sure that our curriculum is relevant and connected to, you know, what we're doing in industry areas. And a lot of it's really geared toward research. So Jeff, I don't know if you saw that. So it's kind of almost repositioning what our focus should be. And
Yeah.
you know, to that point, Cheryl, it's not something I've read. I just put it in the chat, but I have heard it referenced, and it's on a newer side. It came out in 2018. There's a book called Assessing Service Learning and Civic Engagement, and it does go through some of the principles and techniques. And I've seen that cited a lot in different places. So I don't know if that might help, you know, get to maybe some of those, the guiding principles that, you know, we need to look at. But I definitely agree, Jeff. Doesn't make it easy. That is for sure.
Correct.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I know we've decided that internships are not community engagement, but we're having discussions about, certainly I think the turkey Thanksgiving dinner we did fits into that when we did that at Widener. But then we have our intro to business courses do projects with corporations, big and small.
Yep.
And so people have different opinions about, well, how do you categorize that? We think it does work for AACSB, but you know, as I think you pointed out rightly, AACSB made that very open definition, and you have to support it and justify it, which, you know, is both good and bad, right? So it's
Cheryl, I
new.
can
We'll
tell
see how it evolves.
Yep. We don't count internships as community engagement either at
We don't either.
Stockton. And not to throw out another type of learning, but then there's that project-based learning, you know, which we kind of consider in some of the classes where we have those projects. And I think that's where there's a lot of overlap. Like they're all kind of buzzwords, and there's, I want to say, features of each of these different types of learning, whether it's applied, active, experiential, project-based, service learning. There's all those components in there, because we do the same thing. And I found, at least from AACSB, and Jeff, please let me know if you agree with this, is that it's more or less how do we present it, and then, you know, show some level of evidence that it's had an impact somewhere, or potentially could. Because even in the standards, we don't have to see change, because they say, well, change might take 50 years.
Now, one, and accreditation is an evidence-based process. So absolutely, they want to see the evidence. They want to see numbers. How many students, you know, how do you know that it was impactful? You know, what evidence can you provide? And I think one of the things that threads this all through is, and it kind of goes with is the assessing piece and the reflection piece. You know, being able to students to really make the connections between what they're learning, what they're doing, and how, you know, creating citizens of character who are going to go out in the world and realize that it's their responsibility to give back to the community, and how it makes a difference in the field that they're studying and what they do. And again, assessing is a big part of that as well, because again, you have to show, okay, well, great. What difference did you make? How do you know that? What evidence do you have?
And Cheryl, just because I've been trying to search while we're on here, I did find at least an article, and it is a systematic literature review on service learning in higher education. So there are some frameworks. So I'm going to post it in the chat as an attachment, just in case anyone, because I know we're not
You
busy
are
at all.
awesome.
If anyone wants any additional winter break homework, so I'm going to post that in here right now. As soon as I figure out how to do it here. Let's see here. I'm trying here as soon as it comes up.
Maureen, did you? Oh,
I do have
Go.
a question. I practice a lot of the applied learning techniques with the semester-long scaffolded projects in marketing management, hospitality. I'm curious how many of you are doing those types of projects in groups. I'm finding myself after 6 years, 7, 8 years of group projects, I'm at my wits end. I find that even among my best students, there's a sense of you do this part, you do that part, you do that part. And so the synthesis isn't happening. In my online classes where they pretty much have to do the whole thing on their own, I'm getting these amazing assignments because the one person has to bring all the material together. The other thing is I've got all sorts of things in place to make the grading fair, peer evaluation, but I'm also becoming more and more sensitive to how much that stresses out the students in the group who are trying to do things in advance, who are trying to create some boundaries around work that they're doing, and then stressing out because it's 10 o'clock on Sunday night. And I'm like at the point of wanting to give up, not on the assignment, but on the group part. And I'm just curious what you're all experiencing with that.
So I use groups specifically for marketing and management. Now my tourism classes are online, so they're working independently. However, I figured out our learning management system and I was able to group students together in the online class and the asynchronous class where they have to provide some peer feedback. But what I've done this year, because I really echo your frustration, right? So, you know, nobody meets, nobody, they all do it independently and then it comes together and you can tell that when they're getting up to present. So what I've really done specifically in marketing is each piece we've done as a class activity, ideally. So I'd give them time in class, like, okay, let's talk about the, who's the customer, like, how do they make decisions, what motivates them to buy your product? And so together, they're doing that piece together in class, and then I make them get up in front of the room and report it out. And so that really has helped with the cohesiveness. And then when let's say part two's due and they have to do the target market and the brand promise and the positioning, technically separately, they've already worked on all those pieces together. And that, so I've kind of managed the collaboration piece a little bit without them really knowing what they're doing. And then they say, oh, wait, we just did this as a class activity. We already have this information. So I haven't told them that they need that information, but they've already brainstormed together about those things. And it really has made them more cohesive. So we've really integrated this plan into every chapter, like every week. So
that's the direction I think I'm going in. That's really helpful. That's the direction I think I'm going in, where it would just be sort of the scaffolded part would be these in-class activities in a group, and then I would either create an individual reflection, or maybe the final project would be, okay, what's your idea? You spent this whole time in a group, in class, you know, working on things for this company. Now I haven't figured out what that final project would be, but I'm thinking maybe that would be the way to get because again, the learning is the synthesis of it all. And I'm just frustrated, but thank you. That's really,
well, and if
really
I can
helpful.
add, so I do something similar. So depending upon the class, I have 2 different group structures that I use. And I will add that in any of my groups, the group has the right to fire a team member based on evidence. So I will add that. So one approach is that in the group, everyone does work individually. And then there is a facilitator for that particular week that pulls everyone else's information together, summarizes it in a narrative, and then does a video on that narrative. So by the time the project is done, every single person has done the project kind of individually. Someone has synthesized it for them. And at the very end, they have to come together because they all have to produce one narrative and one video. So I've done that. And the second approach that I have is that I have groups where people have like specific roles within the group, and within those roles, there are specific responsibilities. So if Sally didn't do it, it really doesn't matter. That part will just be missing from the project. It doesn't hurt anyone. And then as they go through it, the synthesis happens, which is they have to produce one cohesive presentation that tells a story, as well as the written portion of it, which means that they, as a team, they have to build the kind of like the intro, the discussion, and the conclusion. And I would say that since I changed that structure, I've had significantly better results. And I want to say this is actually my first semester where I've had a group fire a team member. Outside of that, and I make them literally sign like a contract, like you guys are working. This is a work responsibility. And it really has motivated those that are maybe sometimes a little more unproductive in a group.
Well, and I'd like to add, Maureen, so as part of having that, those activities where they're working together, like Noel said, they still have to produce one marketing plan, and they have to present one cohesive plan together at the end of the semester to the rest of the class. So
Nicole, you hit on it. In group theory, there's the task that the groups do, which is the project. And then there's the process. And you've created a process and made it very transparent. And what the group literature says is to have good groups, you need to assign them. You can't let the groups assign themselves. 5 is the ideal number, but not more than 5. Less than 5 is good. Remember, 2 is a couple, 3 is a group. So between 3 and 5. And you need to allow them to either fire someone, as you said, or assess each other, make that part of the process, and really help them understand that in order to do the task well, they have to have roles that move the process along. Just, Noel, just exactly what you're doing. I do the same thing. I actually have roles. There's a speaker role, there's a monitor role. The monitor's role is to engage a student who doesn't show up. So if a student's not there or not participating, the monitor's role is to say, hey, Jennifer, we missed you last meeting. Is everything okay? So when I started to do that, I started to have success in teams. And since COVID, I find these students don't know how to work in teams at all. And I need to work harder into getting them into those process roles and explaining it more. But also since COVID, a plus is they all know how to use Zoom, and they've already created groups. So they're working better outside the classroom than they ever have. They just don't know how to do it. So that's just kind of my 2 cents. I'm going to share an article that I co-authored about empowering individual effort in cooperative learning. And through our research, we discovered things that help to work in groups. So Maureen, don't give up.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to read your article.
Can I ask a question about from everyone? Is there a difference between this kind of a project-based learning with freshmen versus seniors, even seniors in 2-year college or seniors in 4-year college or graduate students? Because one of the things, if we throw a lot of freshmen into having to do teamwork and projects, they've never learned to do cooperative stuff. You have to add that learning and those skill sets to that activity. If you're teaching a junior or senior, or they've had some experience doing that.
Mm-hmm. I would at least say so, Fred. I teach most of the upper level, I want to say 300 and 400 level classes. And I would say that prior to COVID, so I'm one that believes in a little less structure to let the innovative juices flow. And I've found that, as we're kind of all coming back to some sense of norm, that students in general have needed more guidance. Like I don't know if they're almost afraid to put themselves out, like they're going to be too vulnerable in that scenario. So I've found in general, even some of my structured things have needed more structure and more checkups, and they almost need more validation. And, this semester, I know my colleagues that are teaching the 1 and 200 level classes, they've significantly struggled with their group work
Yeah,
with those students. And, one of the things that we've collectively done is to allow more time in the classroom because they're not getting together outside the classroom. So I don't know if anyone else, but, even my seniors who should know how to, at this point, we would hope that they have some general skills to work with and collaborate within a group, have needed more than they have ever needed before.
what I did at NYU for years, because they don't, I mean, we have a lot of people with a lot of different cultures. I put a team project in the early part of the course that was over in 2 weeks. But they had to do an observation, a research observation, count, decide what they're looking at, what will they learn from it, etc. But it was in, out, done. And then we had conversation in the class about what you learn about working together, blah, blah, blah. So later, when they got into groups for other stuff, they've had a beginning, middle, and end experience.
No, if I can add, the class time is invaluable, I have found, because it forces them to begin having conversations that allows them time to ask you questions. It allows them check-in points to see where they're at, and show progress. And I found, and I think, I don't care if it's 2-3 courses and I might, so you sacrifice some material, that's more valuable to me in the long run. And you're right, I think, and I've done that more after COVID, because I agree with you. I think that's definitely needed. And if they're struggling, they won't even come forward and say, I'm like, look, I'm like, why are you telling me now in week 15 when you could have said this in week 2 or 3, and we could have had a conversation and resolved it and moved forward. So it kind of allows you to take care of some of those issues as well, some of the group dynamic issues.
When I did the research theses, all the master's theses at NYU, they had to make 4 presentations during the semester. So they're already, within week 3, they're making a beginning presentation, upfront, public, no slideshow, etc. But I know you're going to think I'm horrible, but that's okay. What I did was I said that when you're standing up as a group, each of you have got to be able to say whatever the subject is. So if Noel starts, I'm going to stop you in the middle and say, Peter, finish what Noel's starting. Or I'll say, David, now you pick up. So they don't learn just their piece, they have to learn everything. And that's done in front of all the other students. Equal treatment, but my point is that happens in business. You don't just do your intro and your thing and your thing. You gotta be able to cover any piece. What happens if someone's sick or hoarse or whatever? And that helped them own all of it.
So thanks, Fred, for your sharing. So I guess I can kind of ask a question maybe for everyone. I think when Jennifer and I were starting to think about we want to do this, and we also kind of also think about, so how can we as a discipline, tourism hospitality, to make this kind of apply learning or project-based or this types of learning to be our competitive advantage, because we realize we all have kind of enrollment crisis or issue. So do you so I just want a little feedback from all of your insight. Do you think this is something students are enjoying, or parents, they're actually looking for programs that with internship? What's your feedback on open houses or any conversation that you have? Noel, I think you want to say
Sure,
something.
I can start, because I think that's such a great question, and I can at least share with you that this is a little bit of our strategy and approach here. And I'm lucky enough that we have Tara Marsh on this today, who is our internship coordinator for our program and is so diligent about pursuing some of these opportunities with our students that, they have this competitive advantage, but we've been trying to pair up our experiential learning opportunities and service learning opportunities with valued credentials in the industry. So for example, our students, they just don't, have experiential learning in the classroom regarding event design. They also are working toward and earn their credential as young professional event designers that's endorsed by MPI. In our hotel operations class, they're not only, learning about revenue management and data analytics, then they're also getting the certification that coordinates to that. So for us, we've been trying to leverage the fact that we've built in all of these different types of learning, and then we've used kind of like a third party to validate what we're doing has value in the industry. And I would say that has shown and been a selling point for us to say that, we are producing competitive graduates in the market.
Yeah, Stockton.
I'm telling you, man, Fred, I'm exhausted at Stockton. They got a lot of standards going on. I'm getting a little tired.
And I think to add to that is providing projects or that students would actually be working on in their careers, not just things they're going to do and throw away when you give them the grade.
Yeah.
Provides them a tangible thing that they can create their own portfolio through their academic journey and say, hey, this is what I've worked on. Actual businesses, actual reports, actual projects. This was the outcome. This is how the company used it. And I think that goes a long way combined with, that credentialing that industry is already looking for. And that I think adds to competitive advantage. Absolutely.
Okay, can I play devil's advocate? Does
Sure.
industry really value these certifications? Did any student ever get, they should, I totally agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But if I have a student that says, I have a CHIA certification, okay. Now, ServSafe, they do value that because in the state of Delaware, that's required. But I've never heard from an employer, or if you look at the surveys, they don't value that. And it's sad to me. They do seem to value how many hours they do their internships or their practicums. I don't know, Jeff, what do you think?
No, you're totally right. And that's a larger conversation that we've been having and still need to have at the ICRE level about what really industry values and what they want. And you're right, and the reason why ServSafe is important is because every state now has a person in charge. It's required. So they want that. But you're right. And unless you're really focusing on a revenue match position, some industry people may not even know what CHIA is, right? They think it's that pet. I mean, so you're dead on, Cheryl, and that's a larger conversation, that we have to have with industry is, that they value these things that we're doing and expect it and want them. And really, that's a marketing tool for students. And I wouldn't stop doing them. We do ServSafe alcohol, ServSafe in a couple of my events class, the food safety. And I think they're great, but we have to get to the point where it's valued and wanted and recognized.
Well, maybe not the credential, but definitely now we've provided them the skills and the knowledge and say, so they may not know what CHIA is, but they say, hey, I know how to build a comp set, benchmark my hotel, create strategy when, and measure these KPIs, right? So maybe we don't know what CHIA is, but they know the terms that I would hope
we got to use that.
People are using.
We got to use the full title because there's too much acronyms and jargon everywhere we go. I mean, I think we got to sell those certifications, but some schools are finding it makes a big difference in recruiting students and in graduating students.
Well, and Cheryl, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but I literally said, we've turned down opportunities to integrate certain certifications because they're not valued. So we've really leveraged our advisory board to say, listen, we have this credential. Will you hire someone and give them priority over someone else? They've straight out told us no, we don't care about that. And others yes, absolutely. That's what we need. And that's how we've tried to guide it. And there are some that, again, we themselves out of the market because it's not valued.
Yeah, I will tell you.
Oh,
go ahead,
I think
David.
it depends upon your market and your advisory board.
Agree.
Yeah.
So my advisory board, I would say 6-7 years ago, said, we want to see certifications coming out of your program. And we're going to hire your students because now we do HIFIA, so it's the mini chia.
Right.
But and I will have students come back to me and say, I got the job because I told them I know something about STR reports and that I can read it. So in the Poconos and in the Lehigh Valley, they want the HIFIA, they want open table, they want C event, they want the certifications, and they're going to hire the student because of it. So it does go back to, you have to work with your industry partners and your advisory board and see what they value.
Yeah, totally agree. One thing, Noel, for AACSB, you can use these certifications as assessment of learning. So that's what we
Yes.
found. Now, our
Yes.
hospitality program is not AACSB accredited. They didn't want to go through it, but we do everything except for go through it. So our faculty have to be qualified. And what we say is, well, if they do the ServSafe, that proves, if we have a high pass rate, that's the way we assess that they've got that food safety knowledge. Same thing with the chia, same thing with, they don't know the initials for the real estate one. So rather than having a whole other layer of assessment on top of it, we've cherry picked. So David, your point, we didn't do the CVET one, but we did do these other ones. And it helps us with assessment of learning, and everybody's happy with that because it's an outside body.
So
that
Cheryl,
says
I would
your
love
students know.
to follow up with you on that, because we used one and they're telling us that because we use it as assessment of learning, there's no room to improve our curriculum because our students are passing. So I would love just to hear your thoughts on that.
What?
Yeah, so
What?
they're asking us to develop internally another assessment to assess, and because we
You will need to do that because it doesn't cover everything.
well, so I'd love to just chat with you on strategies that you've seen, and Jeff, probably something I want to tap into you, because I know you're not the same spot, because I was just like kind of dumbfounded. I'm like, but this is the learning goal that we're assessing. This does it, but because we can't get from that third party the breakdown of what students are getting wrong, they're saying it's process related, not curriculum, and therefore it doesn't count. So I'd love to chat with you guys about
So it has to be in your curriculum as a learning outcome. That's important. If it's not there, and
And
we
it
don't
is.
write them the same way. The learning outcome is not, I think it's broader than what the test.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. A lot also depends on who comes on your visit. The guy who came on our visit was the president of AACSB, and he was just follow it to the letter of the law. There was
Oh,
no
wow.
wiggle room. Yeah, it was brutal. You don't want nice man, but you just don't want, he's trying to prove a point. So a lot depends on how they interpret it too. But that's bizarre.
But Fred, wouldn't that be a great ICRE conference session to work with
Absolutely.
history? To kind of say,
Yeah.
well, what do you currently value right now? What should our students be getting? So we could all
Yeah.
focus on that.
You might be sad what they say. That's
Yeah,
what
I know, but at least we know.
No, I think at the last conference, several industry executives talked about the value of those certifications in the second session in the HR track.
But I
Because
think
it
we have to
solves the
look at
problem Go ahead.
the difference between the industry executives and those at the operational level.
Yeah,
And
good point,
there's a
David.
disconnect between them.
Yes, there is.
And so you've got to find out, what does the operational levels, the regional VPs, the GMs,
Who are hiring
what
our
are they
students?
looking for?
Yep.
Well, we
But
also-
if
we
you
also-
look at the surveys of all the recruiters, which they do, NACE does, they list you're all sitting down. It's all soft skills or human knowledge skills.
Yes.
And yes, Fred, and they list, they don't
There's
list certifications because it's probably more broad, but they list having that experience. I think to your point, David, it is our advisory boards in our market that matters, and that varies from point to point. But let me flip the conversation. How many of you only hire faculty that have a CHE? That's our certification. How many of you look at that on their Vita and say, oh, you are a CHE?
if they don't have it back in when I was at the CIA, they didn't have it. They had the contract of hiring said they had 2 years to get it and pass, or
Okay.
they indicated they no longer wish to be employed.
So I'm gonna be the one to just be completely vulnerable. I don't even know what that stands for.
Well,
Oh.
it's Chia. It's daughter of Chia and
Okay.
grandfather of self-serve.
Sorry, look, I
Certified
no problem. I
hospitality
started to put myself
educators.
out there.
The whole family.
Certified
Fred,
hospitality.
what I did when I was chair and also interim dean is, and I brought Fred in, Fred's one of the people that do it. I paid for everybody who didn't have a CHE, including my adjuncts, to take it because they were better educators. Because most of us, when you get your PhD, they don't teach you how to teach, right? My program had nothing at all to do that. I learned, Jeff, I taught housekeeping at Widener. I was awful, even though I had run a housekeeping department. I had 2 students come to my house and tell me, you need to change the class. That's how bad it was. And because I never learned how to teach. So I'm a firm believer in it, but I can't say we hire on it. I don't think we do.
Actually, more and
but
more PhD
Programs are
Cheryl,
putting it in, I know.
more
yeah.
PhD programs are requiring it because it does make a difference in hiring.
Yeah, and I think it makes a difference in the quality of that.
Oh, yeah.
Teaching,
Well,
sure.
actually, I took it after I'd been teaching for 15 years and it made me a better teacher. But certainly for the PhD students, if they come from programs that they never even TA'd, it's a game changer for them. So, why aren't we promoting that through iCree? I mean, why aren't we drinking our own Kool-Aid, right? Yeah.
So Cheryl, you will like this. We recently hired a new colleague who had no teaching experience, and the school required her to actually complete a CHE. Absolutely.
Yay.
And I think it was very, very useful for her.
But I mean, we should think about those things, right?
Good point.
We used to, see, Noel is new to this, but we used to have a CHE before the Cree conference.
Yes,
Yes, we did. Remember that?
did. Yep.
Actually, we could do it before NENA or during or after NENA.
Oh, that's a
Maybe
great
not this
idea.
year, but maybe, maybe when we're in Maine, right? I think that's the one, because this one's
Yes,
already
it is.
planned.
I'll take
And
it
I
now.
have to say, Fred's the best, hands down. Like Noel, if you're gonna do it,
No, there's a
you
lot
want-
of good people.
it is a very long 2 days. I think they still do it that way. And Fred made it go like that.
Two
Oh,
and
and
a
I
half.
learned so much.
I'm willing to do 2 days with Fred.
Fred, is it, a lot of it's been moved online?
Yes, it was a 4-day course. And they moved it online because they couldn't get people to spend 4 days doing it. When I teach in Hong Kong, the only way I could teach in Hong Kong was to make it 4 days and the exam on the 5th day. And the reason for that is they're all transliterating words, but you can't transliterate words, you have to transliterate concepts. So when you talk about standard, for us in this country, it means a way of doing things. It also means a way of measure, right? That stuff gets people in China and in other countries. I learned to do it in all the words in French to clarify the key concepts. You would find it easy, Noel, because it's not a difficult course. It's about what's a curriculum, how do you do a lecture, how do you do a demo, how do you evaluate students, how do you evaluate peers.
Are you doing the online courses, Fred?
I'm doing, yeah, for Hong Kong. I've done, during COVID, I did Hong Kong, yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think you guys just gave me a good idea about what I should add it to our Rise and Grind for the next academic year, because has been a really good discussion. So we've been passing our scheduled time left, which was at 11. So I would like to thank you everybody again for joining us and joining our.
Ya-Ling, I'm sorry. Can I add one thing real quick before we end? Everybody goes, just check
Sure.
out the schedule is already done for the rest of the academic year. So it's on the NENA website for February, March, and April. There's a session, so hopefully you can attend one of those or all of those. It would be great.
Thank you.
Yep, I will.
Bye, everyone.
Happy
Thank you,
holidays,
everyone.
everybody.
Happy
Thank you.
holiday.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great job, Ya-Ling.
Bye, Jeff. Thanks.
Take care. I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you next week at the board meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's right. See you.
All right,
Bye,
see you.
Fred. Bye.
Fred, feel better.
Bye-bye.